Hey Year 12s, today we're going to be looking at topic 1.8, which is digestion, the microbiome, and malabsorption. And it's going to be broken up into about 6 different topics. So we're going to look at GI, so the gastrointestinal organs and their function. All right. We're going to also look at what chemical and mechanical digestion is. Digestion. We're also going to look at absorption in the villi. All right. We're going to also look at the gut microbiome. And we're going to look at celiac disease and other intolerances okay, we'll just label it as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as well. All right, going on, and I'll just explain like now without writing it down, but what you'll be able to know is you need to identify gastrointestinal organs and describe what their function is too. You also need to be able to explain what chemical digestion is, explain what mechanical digestion is, describe what happens in the absorption in the villi as well, describe the gut microbiome and how that synthesizes vitamin K and short-chain fatty acids, and talk about the nature and causes and symptoms as well of health consequences from being celiac or having celiac disease or lactose intolerance. Okay, and we'll just start off with part 1 and we'll go down, which is digestion and absorption and the gastrointestinal GI tract. Okay, so in particular, what is the GI tract? Well, the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, is a flexible muscular tube, and that runs down the mouth, or running the mouth, the esophagus, the stomach, all right, small intestines, large intestines as well, rectum, and anus too. Okay. Now I'll create a bit of a figure on here, like a bit of a cartoonized figure on here, and how that's going to look. All right. Don't mind my drawing. Now we've got the mouth there, and if we go from there, we'll have the esophagus, the stomach, rectum there. I'm going to draw in here the large intestines too. Okay. Remember, cartoonized version, not going to look amazing, but as simple as I can sort of like make it here. So here we do have, a few things. That's the esophagus. This here is the mouth. All right. This here is the stomach. All right. And we'll have the large intestines, small intestines, all right, rectum, and anus down here as well. Okay, and the GI tract is a part of all of that, and it's flexible, as I said, flexible muscular tubing that makes that up as well. Okay. The next thing is the salivary glands, the pancreas. Now, I haven't drawn them in, but they're accessory or secondary organs in a way, and they release the secretion into the tract when needed. Okay. So think of these as your primary organs, your secondary organs. I'm calling secondary to zero with the zero up top. Secondary. They are salivary glands, the pancreas, liver, gallbladder. Okay. And they are pretty much accessory organs which release secretions of enzymes into the GI tract when needed. Okay. Now, another thing with digestion, it is mechanical and it's chemical, okay? Most enzymes really drive hydrolysis too, and that just means you're adding water to split a large molecule into smaller ones as well, all right? So I'll just write here, digestion is mechanical and chemical as well, okay? Going on. Now that's a bit of a recap of like what the GI tract is. Now we're going to look at GI organs. And their function. And their respective function as well. Alright. So these are the GI organs, and we'll have our primary ones that we'll go through, and our secondary ones too. So just going through it firstly. So we got the mouth, and what the function of the mouth is mastication, which is your your teeth is breaking up food into smaller pieces, which is increasing the surface area. Okay. And I'm just going to say mastication. And as I'm saying it, just write that down as well. So what happens in mastication is your teeth grind up food, and that will then lead to an increased surface area of food where enzymes can now begin chemically breaking it down. And what happens with that is your saliva moistens the food and forms a bolus. Okay. And I'm just going to put bolus formed, and the bolus is formed again, as I said, as the saliva moistens up the food and forms that bolus. And salivary amylase actually begins digestion of carbohydrates. All right, and lingual lipase begins fat digestion. Salivary begins, put an underline of it, CHO digestion, and lingual lipase begins fat digestion. Okay, all right, so that's the first bit. Now, that's in the mouth. All right, so like if you were to put, a piece of bread, for example, in your mouth for, it'd be hard to do this, but if you would put a piece of white bread in your mouth for like 20 minutes, probably very, very hard to do, never done it before. But if you were to do that, what would happen after that is that bread would actually start to create a sweet taste on your mouth, because a lot of starch and a lot of those polysaccharides are now being broken down into smaller carbohydrate units, which will then get broken down into sugar. All right, so that's what happens there. Same goes with lingual lipase, but you won't really taste the smaller fatty acids as well. All right, going on. That's what happens with the mouth. That's the function. There's about 4 functions there. Okay. The next one is salivary glands as well. Okay, so the first one is it secretes saliva. Okay. And then the enzyme salivary amylase and lipase are also involved here. Secretes salivary. Which we spoke about a little bit earlier. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates, lipase breaks down fats. The next one is the pharynx. What happens there, that just passes the bolus from the mouth to the esophagus, and the epiglottis really closes airways to prevent choking too. So it passes the bolus to the esophagus and prevents choking. All right. The next one is let's go down a bit. Esophagus. What is the esophagus? Well, it actually allows for peristalsis, which pushes the bolus to the stomach. All right, and the esophagus is a sphincter at the end of that esophagus as well. There is a sphincter that actually closes and stops the black flow, which closes that reflux too. So the main one I'll put here is peristalsis, and it's a smooth muscle, all right, which allows for the bolus to actually move to the stomach, allowing bolus to move to the stomach, using that smooth muscle to gently transition the food down the GI tract. The next one is the stomach. And with the stomach, you've got circular, longitudinal, and diagonal muscles. So you've got a lot of muscles there that are going to mix and churn the bolus with gastric juices to form gastric juices in the form of, and that will chime the food as well. Okay. So to put it really simply, the stomach's going to mix and churn food, the bolus, with gastric juices, and the hydrochloric acid, which has a really low pH, which is also in the stomach, will kill bacteria. It will denature proteins as well that food contains, and it will activate pepsin as well to break those proteins down too. Okay, so there's a few uses there. All right, just writing that all down now, it will say it mixes and churns the bolus, all right, with gastric juices. And the next thing we'll say is HCl, which is found in the stomach, will kill bacteria, denature proteins, and you can even say activate pepsin to kick start protein metabolism. All right, we're nearly there. So we've got the liver next. Okay, the liver, what does that do? It produces bile, which emulsifies fat. Bile, which emulsifies fat, which is an example of mechanical digestion, MD. All right. What does the gallbladder do? It stores, it will concentrate and release bile as well. Stores, concentrates, and releases bile. The next thing is the pancreas. Alright, what does the pancreas do? It secretes digestive enzymes, amylase, trypsin, lipase, and sodium bicarbonate too via the pancreatic duct. So it secretes digestive enzymes. Okay. Insulin as well. Okay. And the next one is the small intestines. You've got 3 sections of the small intestines. The main thing is it completes chemical digestion and absorbs nutrients and water through villi and microvilli. So it completes chemical digestion okay, and absorbs nutrients and water, H2O, okay, and then we've got large intestines. That is an ascending, transverse, and descending colon as well. The ascending going up, across and down. All right. And what happens in here? We've got bacteria which ferment soluble fiber and reabsorbs water, salt, and other minerals to form stool. Okay. So bacteria, all right, ferment soluble fiber. Alright, and reabsorb water, salt, and minerals to form stool. Alright, and then finally, rectum and anus. It holds waste, alright, and muscle relaxes to excrete it. So rectum and anus holds waste and the muscle controlling relaxes to excrete it. Okay. Alright, the next thing that I wanted to go through is a bit of the second point, which is chemical and mechanical digestion as well. So number 2, which is chemical and mechanical digestion. Alright, I'll get you to skip through the video. I'm just going to take 30 seconds to do something. I'll be back in a sec. Just get you to skip. Okay, I'm back. So, going on. What I'm going to talk about now is chemical and mechanical digestion. We'll first go through what mechanical digestion is. Okay. Okay. And pretty much mechanical digestion, what that is basically, pardon me, is basically 3 processes: mastication, peristalsis, emulsification of lipids, and that's it. Okay, it's mechanically digesting or breaking down a food through a certain process of physically breaking it into smaller pieces. Okay, it's not looking at chemical in a way where it's using chemicals to do something, but no. And I'm just going to say physically breaking or foods / nutrients down into smaller pieces. And looking at that, there's I'm just going to talk about the process and a site and what happens as well. So process-wise is the first one we're going to look at is mastication. All right. Site-wise, where that happens is the mouth as well. And what happens is you're grinding, you're chewing with your teeth to break down foods into smaller pieces. So teeth breaks foods into smaller pieces. Okay. Number 2, peristalsis. Is in the esophagus, and it's also in a lot of the GI tract too. It can be found in some certain areas in the GI tract too, such as sections of the small intestines too, but esophagus is the primary one as well. So that involves contractions. All right. And that involves contractions and relaxations of circular smooth muscle, which pushes food in one direction. Of smooth muscle pushing food in one direction. All right. The next one is emulsification of fat. And where does that happen? Well, that happens in the small intestines. I'm just going to call that SI for now. In your notes, you can write that down as small intestines. What happens there is it breaks bile, bile breaks larger fat globules into smaller droplets, and that increases surface area for lipase to then further break it down. So I'll just say bile breaks fat globules into smaller droplets And this increases surface area for lipase to further break it down. Okay. Next, we've got a couple more that I'll talk about is mixing and churning, alright, which is in the stomach. I know I spoke about those other three, but there's a couple more, which is in the stomach as well. Now, what happens in those is with mixing and churning, what will happen is we've got three muscle layers which mix the bolus, and the muscle layers tend to mix the bolus together with gastric juices to form a chyme. So, muscle of stomach, or stomach really, mixes the bolus to form a chyme. Okay, which is more of a liquidy paste as well. Then finally, we've got segmentation. Okay, and what is segmentation? Where does that happen? It happens in the small intestines. I'm just going to call that SI. What is it? Well, circular muscles now, your muscles will contract, relax, to mix the chyme with enzymes and slow it down for maximum absorption. So I'll just say muscles in small intestines contract and relax to mix chyme with enzymes and slow it down for max absorption. There's a lot of content, I know. There's a lot of writing you're going to be doing as well. Alright, but it's okay. You'll get there. That's all in all. That is mechanical digestion. The next one is chemical digestion. Alright. Here's the thing. I'm just going to break this down into macronutrients and what happens with specific macronutrients in terms of like the site where they're digested, what enzymes as well, and what the products are too. Okay. So first one is carbohydrates. I'll just call that CHO. We've got a few different sites here. We've got the mouth. We've got the small intestines, SI, and we've got small intestines as well. Okay, I'll just show what I mean by that. So firstly, the enzymes, we've got salivary amylase. The small intestines, we've actually got, not salivary now, sorry, pancreatic amylase. So that's more so for, if the saliva hasn't broken it down, now the pancreatic amylase is going to break it down. And the next one in the small intestines, we've actually got maltase, sucrase, and lactase. Why do we have those three? So this is how it's going to go. Salivary amylase is going to break down long carbohydrate chains into shorter polysaccharide, and that turns it into shorter poly and disaccharides. Okay, now when you've got those shorter poly and disaccharides, that amylase is then going to break down specific disaccharides and polysaccharides into maybe monosaccharides or shorter disaccharides even. And that's getting then broken down into even more shorter poly and disaccharides. But what's happening here in the small intestines, Maltase, sucrase, lactase. Lactase breaks down lactose into the two monosaccharide units. Sucrase breaks down sucrose into the two monosaccharide units. Maltase breaks down breaks down maltose into the two monosaccharide units, which is just glucose and glucose. So those break it down into respective monosaccharides. Alright, that's what happens there in the chemical digestion of carbohydrates. The next one we'll look at is proteins. Sites, well, we've got the stomach. Okay, we also have small intestines, and we also have small intestines too. And what enzyme or juice is being used here in the stomach? The first one is HCl, hydrochloric acid, and gastric pepsin. All right, what's that forming? Well, those protein chains are getting formed into shorter peptide chains. In the small intestines, what's happening is trypsin and chymotrypsin are breaking it down into peptides and amino acids. Okay, so trypsin and chymotrypsin breaks it down into peptides and amino acids, if it's possible to create amino acids. And then finally, intestinal peptidase what that does, it breaks down these peptides into single amino acids. Okay, and then that's absorbed into the bloodstream. I'll just put a highlight mark on that. And also these are absorbed directly into the bloodstream. They're singular units are absorbed directly into the bloodstream. Okay. Then finally, we've got fats, or we can call them lipids too. Okay, for the purpose of this, I'll talk about how they're going to be called fats. So what we have there, what are the areas? So firstly, we've spoken about the mouth. All right, mouth, we have lingual lipase. All right, and that is broken down into shorter fatty acid chains. Fatty acid chains, okay? SFAC, shorter fatty acid chains. And the next one is small intestines. What happens in there? Well, we spoke about it earlier. Bile is an emulsifier. It breaks down into, we'll just say bile. And that breaks it down into smaller fat globules. Next, we also have the small intestines again, and we have now pancreatic lipase, which that breaks it down into glycerol and shorter fatty acids, which can get, I'll just put glycerol and shorter fatty acids. All right, which is then directly absorbed into the bloodstream, okay? And pancreatic lipase can also break it down into monoglycerides and longer fatty acids as well, which is put into the lymphatic system. But I'll keep it to this here and just say that this is then put into the bloodstream as well. All right, that's chemical digestion. That is a pretty detailed analysis of all the chemical digestion, all the different enzymes too. All right, but the idea is in chemical digestion, you've got these long chains, And now they're going to get broken down into their singular building blocks to enable them to then be absorbed directly into the bloodstream to be used for what they need to be used for. Alright? Alright, the next one we'll just sort of talk about is absorption in the villi, what that is. That's number 3 as well. Absorption in the villi. Okay. Now, the small intestines, especially the wall of it, is folded into millions of villi, and those villi are then covered by microvilli, and they have a hugely increased surface area. And if you've got a huge surface area, what happens is you're going to actually increase the rate of absorption, and that increases the amount of areas for absorption too. Okay, roughly 80% of micronutrients and 90% of water, this is rough estimations, are absorbed in the small intestines through diffusion, facilitated diffusion as well, even active transport too. All right, and nutrients are really ready to be, early absorbed in the duodenum, which is the initial part, and slower ones are more in the jejunum and the ileum, which is the later part of the small intestines as well. All right, I'll just take a couple little key notes, and what I've spoken about I'd like you to write in as well, but I'll just rewrite these things. So I'm just going to say the small intestine wall, okay, is folded into millions of villi, and that is covered in microvilli. Okay, and this increases surface area for increased absorption rates. And here's the thing, it's going to sort of look a little like this. That's your villi. Okay, that's on the intestinal wall. And within here, within a little section of that villi, that's going to also have microvilli, like that. To sort of, increase that surface area. So your body's actually quite a smart operator in a way. It's developed over many millions of years. And it's actually got a really good system in the small intestines to actually improve how we consume things. So roughly 80% of micronutrients, I'm just going to write micro N, and 90% of H2O is absorbed by small intestines as well. And as I said, that's through diffusion, facilitated diffusion, active transport. But you don't need to know the exact process of how that's done, because it's more of a year 12 biology thing as well. So I'll just say, as I said earlier, nutrients are easily absorbed in the duodenum, slower ones into the jejunum and ileum, and monosaccharides and amino acids, okay, are actually absorbed into the bloodstream here. All right, and that's because they are broken down into those units too. And then fatty acids, glycerol and monoglycerides are in the lymph system, which join the bloodstream near the heart. So in the lymph system, all right, and then that goes to the bloodstream to near the heart. And absorbed nutrients will travel to the body for use or storage, or for the liver to further increase metabolism. But the big thing there with villi is you've got a folded nature, so it's folded, and it really increases surface area, and that increases absorption rates as well. Okay. All right. Now looking at the next bit, which is the gut microbiome. All right. What is the microbiome? Well, I'm going to talk about it, and as I'm talking about it, because I'm just really weary of time, as I talk about it, I want you to write. All right. So gut microbiome, what it is, it's a community of, I would say, trillions, hundreds of trillions of microbes. This means bacteria, viruses, fungus, protozoa, things like that living on the body, mostly live in the large intestines. Okay, so it's in the large intestines, all right? And really, we have roughly 100 trillion microbes living in there. All right. So, and we also share a symbiotic relationship with them. So we provide a home for them. They help and extract energy and vitamins from food as well. Okay, we have a balanced and diverse health from them as well. And a diverse microbiome lowers the risk of things, and a lot of research has shown this, but a diverse microbiome lowers the risk of cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, obesity even, asthma, and supports immunity too. So it actually does have a big impact on our health, okay? Now, the next one that we're going to look at in that section is the synthesis of vitamin K and shorter chain fatty acids, SCFAs as well. And I'll just explain that to you again as I'm talking about it. Take notes. I might just put the most small little writing on that as well. Okay, but what shorter chain fatty, why the microbiome matters for, your health and digestion? Well, firstly, as I said, shorter chain fatty acids are produced. So that's produced when gut bacteria ferment indigestible carbohydrates. So as I said, shorter chain fatty acids made through bacteria fermenting indigestible CHOs. And that is soluble fiber, resistant starch as well. Okay, they're the main energy source for the cells lining in the large intestines, and they protect against gut inflammation too. And they actually reduce the risk of inflammatory bowel disease and colorectal cancer as well, and even cognitive decline. But they really do improve the risk, or reduce the risk of inflammatory bowel disease and colorectal cancer too. The next one is vitamin K. So gut bacteria synthesize B group vitamins, all right? And they also synthesize vitamin K2, okay? And the amount may be insufficient, so the diet's still needed, but because dietary K2 is scarce, the gut is a major source of K2, which supports bone formation and all that. So the way it can create K2 is it can actually synthesize it through the actual bacteria that are in that which feed off that and will actually produce that. So it does synthesize vitamin K, okay, which is in the form of K2 as well. All right, some factors that can affect the microbiome, okay. So there's a few factors. So prebiotic, so the food we eat, they act as gut fertilizers. I'm just going to write these down as well. So what improves Diversity. Let's say diversity of the microbiome. One is prebiotic foods, which act as gut fertilizers. All right. And indigestible carbohydrates, such as soluble fiber, resistant starch, even inulin, soluble fiber, will increase the way the bacteria ferments the food for energy and produce short-chain fatty acids, and they are a food source for probiotics as well. And what are probiotics? I'll write that down. Probiotics are like bacteria which actually live off and need prebiotic foods, and they restore the good balance to gut microbiome as well, because they are good bacteria. They are found in foods like yogurt, kombucha, sauerkraut, a lot of fermented foods as well. And they protect the colon as well and reduce symptoms of lactose intolerance and IBS too. Okay. That's what improves it. What doesn't improve it or reduces diversity of microbiome? Well, food poisoning's one. Why? It reduces the beneficial bacteria and it lets harmful bacteria grow, and it does unbalance the microbiome. Food poisoning's one. Antibiotics is another. What do antibiotics do? Well, they kill bacteria. So they can't really distinguish between good and bad bacteria. So they just cut the whole lot of bacteria in your large intestines too. Okay. A good way after consuming antibiotics to actually improve that is to take a probiotic and consume foods that do support probiotics, such as fiber, as well, soluble fiber that is, and some resistant starch too. That is about what produces it. Now, I'll explain. I want you to write as we go along. But this last little couple bits that we're going to talk about are factors interfering with digestion or absorption. Okay. Number one is celiac disease. Okay. What is celiac disease? Well, it's an autoimmune disease which gluten triggers an immune response that inflames the small intestinal walls. It doesn't affect a lot of people. It affects about, in Australia, 1 in 70 to 1 in 80 Australians as well. And gluten is a protein found in wheat, rye, barley, oats as well. And what happens after that it's been consumed, it inflames and damages and flattens out the villi, all right? And that reduces surface area, which will then in turn reduce the amount of nutrients we absorb too. And some symptoms will be, bloating, flatulence, diarrhea, abdominal cramps. It can cause nausea, fatigue. It's not great as well. And what are some health consequences in the end? So some health consequences can be nutrient deficiencies that you can have, even like anemia, osteoporosis, because of those nutrient deficiencies over time. So it's not great to have gluten if you are celiac. You shouldn't consume it at all. All right? And the main problem there is because it can damage and flatten the villi and the microvilli, okay? And again, if it does that, it reduces the surface area and you really can't absorb nutrients that well in the small intestines. In terms of management, it's a strict gluten-free diet. You can't be consuming much gluten at all. Number 2 is lactose intolerance. Okay, what's the cause here? Well, it's an inability to digest lactose, which is a disaccharide that's found in dairy, because the intestinal cells make too little lactase, okay, which is what breaks down lactose. Lactase breaks down lactose, which would normally split that glucose and galactose, bonded together, which make lactose. And that's what it is. We don't have enough lactase to break that down. Now, lactase production naturally will decline with age. It's really high in childhood and adolescence. And it's really high just after birth too. And it can drop when the villi are damaged by disease, medication, and things like that. So that's what lactose intolerance is. What are some symptoms? Well, undigested lactose will travel through the large intestines where bacteria will ferment it too. And gases and acids that irritate the gut lining are made, and lactose will also attract the water, and you have bloating, abdominal discomfort, diarrhea. It's not great. Management wise, do not consume any lactose at all. If you're lactose intolerant, it will again affect and damage a little bit of that large intestines around there, and will cause that too. And in terms of what people could do is consume lactose-free milk, even consume lactase enzyme tablets before consuming a food which has milk as well, and that would be the best way to actually manage that. All right. Have a go at some of the questions in 1.8. As a rule of thumb now, because it's getting so close to mid-year exams, look at a couple questions. Look at ones that you feel like can challenge you a bit and just do them. Have a goal of doing at least 5. All right. Good luck, guys.